everybody. Where do you come to get all your news? You already know. It is the Washington Informer. Welcome. It is Friday, November 8th, and you have tuned into another edition of Let's Talk on Win TV. I am Misha Green, Washington Informer Managing Editor, and we are tuning in on a Friday from a week that has been quite a lot in the United States, from the election to so many conversations about next steps. And as we know, here in Washington, there's been quite a lot. We've had a lot of people not from the area in town. We've had a lot of street closures. We've also had a huge Commanders win that has been record breaking and history making. So there's been a lot to talk about. Before we even go there, though, we have a wonderful episode planned for you today. Our guests are Dr. Ryan Daniels, president of the Institute of the Black World 21st Century, who will be sharing insights on the organization's upcoming town hall discussion regarding the 2024 presidential election and so much more. What's at stake for the Black community? Our lifestyle reporter, Brenda C. Seiler, will be talking with Dr. Khalia Jenkins, who's with us to discuss her research on labeling products as Black owned and shedding light on the crucial aspect of consumer culture. And I got to hear a little bit of conversation backstage from Dr. Khalia, who I know will give you all a lot of really strong insight about Black owned products and how people are purchasing them and how we can tap in. And finally, Brenda will be speaking with actor, director, and screenwriter, and should I say Emmy winner as well, Ruben Santiago-Hudson, about his latest project, The Other Americans. We have it in this week's paper with a conversation with John Leguizamo, which is really an awesome story from Brenda C. Seiler. And is anybody fangirling, or is it just me when she'll get to chat with Ruben Santiago-Hudson, who is the director of The Other Americans at Arena Stage? So there is so much happening this week. But before we bring our first guest, we gotta talk about this week's paper because, oh my goodness, there was so much going on this week. We had in this week's paper a fresh take, if you will, on the presidential election post the victory of former president and now president-elect Donald Trump and the loss of Vice President Kamala Harris. It was a historic election. We also know it was a stressful election season. Some of us are probably saying it's finally over, thank goodness. And some of us are probably still coping with the decision Americans made, and maybe others are ecstatic about the decision that Americans made. There's a lot of mixed feelings here. And so what we've done on the front page of this week's paper, and this story by Stacey M. Brown and Jada Ingleton, is talk to folks on the campus of Howard University, folks who were there Tuesday night, hoping to celebrate the historic election of Vice President Kamala Harris as the first Black and Southeast Asian woman president and first woman president of the United States. And so there was a lot of celebration leading up to the ballots closing. And as soon as returns came, the story talks about a shift, if you will, in morale. People were keeping up hope and really trying. But our reporter, Jada Ingleton, who was on site, described the people leaving the campus. And then Stacey is able to give us insight from other folks who are experts on the election about what happened. And we also hear from the victor, former President Donald Trump, as well as the vice president. And I also want to follow up on that because, of course, the paper comes out Wednesday afternoon. But Wednesday afternoon, we also published a really strong story online that I would love for you all to go to WashingtonInformer.com about Vice President Harris's really inspirational concession speech, and talked to people again on Howard University's campus about the call to action that the vice president offered. And she said that the fight is not over, that we still have work to do. And you've seen our coverage, hopefully, over the past week on WIN TV, as we've assured our Washington Informer audience that we are rolling up our sleeves and have a lot of work to do. We will keep a pulse on this upcoming administration and ensure that you all are informed about the issues that affect you and the important things that you should know about, and the people who in the community here in Washington D.C. and at large who are being affected. And so, of course, we will certainly keep a pulse on all of that. Then we also have on the front of this week's paper is the a recap, if you will, of the very packed DC election. There was so much happening, and Sam P.K. Collins was able to really do a comprehensive story that covered every victor from Councilmember Trayon White of Ward 8 to the approval of Initiative 83 and the mixed feelings surrounding that, and the Black women who were victors in the Advisory Neighborhood Commission race in Ward 7. In Ward 7 and 8, I believe. So many really exciting things happening. We also, the Ward 7 State Board of Education election as well, we covered. And so Sam really is able to give you all of the information that you need to know about that. And again, some of the mixed feelings surrounding it. And also, how could I forget? And also, he covers the victory again of Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is our representative in Congress, and some of the feelings regarding that as well, from speaking with Kamon Freeman, who was one of Congress or Delegate Norton's, if you will, opponents in the race. And we talked to him on Tuesday night. He said no matter what, this was a victory for him. So just a lot of really good information in that story. After that, there's also the historic election of Senator-elect now Prince George's County Executive Angela Brooks. And at some point, if we maybe as I'm talking about, if we're able to get it, not a big deal. There's a great photo of Senator-elect Brooks that we captured that unfortunately didn't make the front, but is in the paper. And congratulations. We also did endorse Senator-elect Brooks. And Richard Elliott does a great story covering all of the ins and outs of the Maryland election, particularly as it relates to Prince George's County. And of course, now there will be a special election for the Prince George's County executive. So we're going to keep a pulse on that and see what's happening. And finally, and last but certainly not least, as this is a very important issue that we cover here, which is celebrating our veterans locally and, of course, nationwide. But James Wright does a really great story looking at some of the local celebrations and talks to Gregory Crawford, president of Access Housing, who really gives a wonderful breakdown about not only the celebrations that'll be happening at Access Housing this week, but all of the work that Access Housing does throughout the year and over the years to help local veterans and give them housing support, give them career opportunities and trainings and access. And so it's a really great story, and you don't want to miss that as well. And you'll just see that little tease, our informer insignia is covering it. But you already know what time it is. It's Commander season. uh, the Commanders defeated the New York Giants, and let me tell you, it was a wonderful game that Skylar Nelson talks about and wraps up in a really beautiful way in our sports section. So you want to check that out. Now, before we bring on our first guest, Dr. Ron Daniels, please be sure to tune in today's broadcast and share it on your social media platforms and follow us on Facebook, IG, Twitter, which is now X, TikTok, Nextdoor, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And receive our publication directly in your inbox, along with daily news updates from our exclusive e-service. Go to Win Daily. And subscribe. It's free, and you'll never miss out on important information. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Washington Informer TV. So, I have to tell you, I'm a huge fan of Win Daily. So make sure you subscribe to our wonderful exclusive e-newsletter. It's a great resource, as well as Our House, Win Africa, and as you all saw this week, some special coverage as well, as we shot you some really important information about the election. So you definitely want to make sure you're subscribed to that. All right, without further ado, I think it's time to bring on Dr. Ron Daniels, president of the Institute of the Black World. Dr. Daniels, are you with us today?
So,
Hello?
Misha,
Yeah.
Ron Daniels is not here yet. I'm going to put him on the phone.
Okay.
I just give me a second to upload a picture, and we'll see how this works. Just a
Okay.
second, okay?
Alrighty. Well, I guess in the meantime, in between time, I have to shout you guys out and thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we really, truly appreciate that. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Drop it in the comments. Tell us what's going on, what's on your mind. And as always, we love to say, let us know about any stories, things that we should know about what's happening in the community at news@washingtoninformer.com. Hello, Facebook user. It's so great for you tuning in. Thank you. Good afternoon, Win TV. Thank you for providing coverage. Of course, of course, of course. Thank you. We really appreciate you for tuning in. And again, drop where you're from, what you're up to, what's on your mind, as we try to get Dr. Daniels. I'll also share a little bit more about what was in this week's paper, because there, was so much that I think you all really will be interested in. Now, of course, I teased The Other American Story by Brenda C. Seiler, who you'll get to hear about up close and personal with director Ruben Santiago-Hudson, whose son is also in the show, and I think is really, really cool. So you don't want to miss that. We also had in this week's paper a great piece breaking down mental health efforts here in the district, and an app developer who's actually working to provide mental health assistance and help through technology and through right here, what's in our hands, our phones. He and sorry, and excuse me, that piece is by Eden Harris. We also have pieces in this week paper looking at educational efforts in Prince George's County, such as the Prince George's County Council, introduced by Councilmember Juanica Fisher, saying, hey, let's address cell phone usage in the classroom. And so Her current the legislation that she's introducing would stop cell phone usage in classrooms. And this is a conversation that's, of course, ongoing. And in that story, again, by our Prince George's correspondent, Richard Elliott, he talks about, or he talks to folks who, again, not only want to have that conversation in Prince George's County, but on the statewide level. So a lot of really wonderful information in this week's paper. You don't want to miss a thing. So make sure, again, you go to WashingtonInformed.com for all that we have to give to you. And I think without further ado, Chevry is bringing in Dr. Ron Daniels. Hello, Dr. Daniels. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's always great to be with you. My apologies for all of the tech difficulties and my Neanderthal state of mind here. I just did an OJ from the airport to be with you and to be with your listening audience at this very, very crucial moment in history. And I'm so delighted that despite all of the obstacles and so forth, and maybe that's an omen because, at the end of the day, there are obstacles, there are barriers, but we shall overcome.
We shall overcome. I think that's a great message and definitely something that we're pushing here at the Washington Informer. No matter anything that seems like darkness, the Washington Informer is here to bring the light of information to the community. And Dr. Daniels is certainly doing that with his work with International Black World 21st Century. We thank you so much for being with us today. And this town hall on Thursday, November 14th, here in the district at 6:30 p.m. sounds really exciting. But even before we get into the nitty-gritty of the town hall, take us back, Dr. Daniels, and the work that you do at IBW 21st Century.
Well, we work on a range of issues. We've been at this now for almost 25 years or so. The purpose for the Institute of the Black World 21st Century, building on the work that was done by Dr. Vincent Harding, the incredible Dr. Vincent Harding, who was an advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King, and people like Howard Dotson and others, Ashley Lerone Bennett Jr., and created the Institute of the Black World 21st Century as a place to begin to examine in a scholarly way those issues that impact Black people in this country and throughout the world. And just an incredible amount of scholarship that was produced. In fact, it was from the Institute of the Black World the original Institute of the Black World, that the Black Studies movement was generated and was accredited across the country. It eventually closed for lack of funding and whatever. We picked it up and wanted to continue as essentially a resource center, an African-centered, action-oriented, progressive resource center that really focuses more than anything else on building what we call building a culture of collaboration, trying to get our people to break out of their silos to work together collectively through a division of labor to organize ourselves to be effective in dealing with the issues of race and class and gender and in our communities across this nation and throughout the world. So we deal with issues related to gentrification, the whole question of dealing with reimagining policing and law enforcement. We work hard on the question of ending the war on drugs, and have had some great success around that. We have a Pan-African Unity Dialogue that brings together African Americans, Continental Africans, Caribbean Americans, and Afro descendants from the Caribbean to talk about how do we collectively work together, as Ron Walters would have said. In fact, was inspired by Ron Walters. Some of our audience, I'm sure, knows him, to practice Pan-Africanism right where we are. And then we are in the lead, really, in helping to build the National African American Reparations Commission, which is at the forefront of advancing not only HR 40, but local reparations by way of Evanston, Illinois, and all across the country. So we have a broad plan, and Haiti, dare I say, leaving Haiti out. We are in the forefront of working also with the crisis in Haiti. So that's the kind of work that we are doing, and we have been blessed since our inception, every 4 years to bring together some of the brightest and best of our leadership across the board to assess the impact of presidential elections on Black America and the Pan-African world, since we need to know where we're going. We need to know from the perspective of a Black agenda, what does each election mean? And that is what, of course, brings us to this extraordinary moment, one like almost any other in the history of these United States of America, on November 14th, with our international town hall meeting to assess the state of Black America and the Pan-African world after this most consequential election.
Well, I have to ask you, Dr. Daniels, but I think I already know the answer based off of your travels. When do you sleep? Oh my goodness.
Well, people do ask about that, but and I tease our younger sisters and brothers, and I say that the secret is because I'm of a certain age these days, and I'm in the winter of my work. But I mentioned that, back in the day, there was something called Geritol, and so I tease my younger staffers and comrades and colleagues with the idea that I use Geritol. But at the end of the day, more than anything else, and I've been up all in the middle of the night thinking about where we are now, the energy comes from a connection with our ancestors. It comes from, a commitment that we're not going back, that, the forward flow of history, or as Martin Luther King says, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But we have to bend it. We showing what we want to be, we showing what we are going to be, but we showing what we were. We have made progress, but at every twist and turn. And that's why the book by Vincent Harding comes to mind. He wrote a book called There Is a River. And in that book, he traces the history of our people. And he points out it is not a straight path. There are obstacles, just like a river. You hit an obstacle, but that river flows over top of the obstacle. It flows around it, or it takes a twist and a turn. But there is the forward flow of that river. And that's where we are now in terms of this extraordinary moment in history, in terms of having achieved so much in terms of the civil rights movement and the movement for the Pan-African Black power, and all of these movements sort of converging to move us forward to the point that we have, more elected officials than we've ever had before. We have Black people in positions of power in corporations and everywhere. And yet, what we have seen, and I put this and I quote, we are in a situation where nearly half of the American citizenry somehow could ally itself, with really issues of race, misogyny, xenophobia, all kinds of ugliness that one would not have thought would be in the systems of American society at this late state in history, but they are. And so, we can moan about it and groan about it, and we need to do that. We can cry about it, and I've done some of that too, But at the end of the day, like our ancestors, we have to get up, and we have to get up and get busy, and we have to do an analysis of what is going on. Why is what happened, and then what do we do as Black people? And I say it from the perspective, and this is what I really think we have to stress even more at all levels in our community, that we have been the conscience of this country. Despite the fact that, as Reverend Jesse Jackson said years ago, hands that pick cottons can pick presidents. Well, that's what we have helped to do.
Yeah.
And having picked presidents, it still has yet not been enough. But those same hands, within the context of a society that holds out a certain promise in terms of the Declaration of Independence, which was really, in some ways, a false declaration, but nonetheless, through the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, still provided a possibility to stretch that which was only meant essentially for white men in this society, certainly not women, certainly not indigenous people, and certainly not enslaved Africans. There is the possibility to shape.
Dr. Daniels, sorry, I'm going to just hold you
towards that more perfect union, and that's the challenge.
Yes, no, and thank you. Sorry, I just want to make sure we get in time for the town hall because we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, and I want to make sure people get information about this. November 14th, what's at stake? Tell us why we're talking and about this dynamic group of panelists you have.
Yes, so we're gathering, and like I said, we've always done this, but we just put out the notion: would it be progress or disaster? And it has tended to be looking like the latter. But at the end of the day, it will not be that, because we will see that it's not there. But we've gathered, people like Mark Morial, the president of the National Urban League, Dr. Julianne Malvo, who is certainly no stranger to people not only in D.C. but around the world, Reverend Siobhan Arlene Bradley, who is the relatively new leader of the great National Council of Negro Women, Hillary Shelton from the NAACP. If you don't know Jennifer Jones-Austin, you should. She is the vice chair of the National Action Network, but her own organization, the Federation of Protestant Welfare Organizations. George Fraser, who has the largest network of Black professionals, socially conscious Black professionals in the world, who wrote the book Success Runs in Our Race. Mel Foote, our really designated Secretary of State for Black America. He'll be there. Melanie Campbell, certainly been on this journey for so long, organizing Black voters, and also the Black Women's Roundtable. A young brother that you all will need to come to know, because the future of this country is going to be a third party, and it's going to be the working party's family, I declare. And that is Maurice Mitchell, who is really sort of one of the brains behind the movement for Black Lives. Dr. Melina Abdullah, who is the national president, director for the Black Lives Matter grassroots. She was the vice presidential candidate for Cornel West. And Robin Ruth Simmons, who is the architect of the reparations initiative in Evanston. It is the only space where reparations is actually being awarded and emulated all across the country because of Evanston, and states like California and New York are following in the path. And then our own Reverend Graylin Hagler, who's been such a visionary, powerful voice for so many years, dealing with issues of social justice and racial justice and development, most recently around the issues of Gaza, but also a whole question of reimagining policing and public safety. So that is the lineup that we have for this town hall meeting that will be at a very historic place, because the New York Avenue Presbyterian Church is where Frederick Douglass attended and Abraham Lincoln attended. The reluctant emancipator and the great abolitionist. Frederick Douglass, Lord have mercy, one of the greatest leaders we have ever produced, there in that church. That's where we'll be gathered. And again, the doors it's at 6:30. Doors will open at 6 o'clock, and we really, really, really want people to come out. Not only will we have a discussion among the panel, there will be Q&A with the audience. And let me just say that one of the things we're also going to do is we're going to honor Mary Frances Berry. And if some people don't know Mary Frances Berry, that's why we're going to honor Mary Frances Berry, one of the most extraordinary women in the last half century, who headed the U.S. Civil Rights Commission for many, many, many years, holding the fort for Black people, but also all oppressed people in this country, and was one of the 4 people who sat in at the South African embassy to, in fact, begin to launch the Free South Africa movement, and then to write a great book, about Callie House and the reparations movement. This great woman we will also honor at this town hall meeting. So we really, really want people to come out to engage, because this is the beginning. This town hall meeting is the beginning of a range of conversations I know that we're going to have all over this country, because we've got to have those conversations. We've got to be engaged with each other more based on what we've seen, some of the issues that have come up. And rather than shrink from them, and rather than say, why did somebody do this and this issue, we have to figure out how to solve them. We have to turn to each other and discuss with each other and debate with each other, because Black people, the Black base in this country is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, in the United States of America. We have yet to recognize it, but we're going to keep working on it and keep building on it until we get people to understand that. And that is not to the exclusion of anyone else. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we are the cornerstone of a rainbow that can connect all righteous communities, or what Dr. King called the beloved community. That notion, we are at the center of that, but we have to understand who we are and whose we are, and be able to educate our people at all levels. We got a class divide in our community that we got to begin to recognize more. We got issues that have emanated from mass incarceration, that split up our families, disinvestment, deindustrialization, that have hit hard in some corners of our communities that have yet to be touched really in a way that's meaningful. And I think this election revealed that. So we don't get upset about it. I mean, we don't get into a negative attitude about it. We figure out, how do we engage? How do we get our people together? How do we build across generations, to in fact bend that moral arc of history towards justice?
Wow. Well, I'm fired up. I thank you so much, Dr. Ron Daniels, for being with us today, despite your very busy schedule and the really important work that you're doing. I'm really happy that you were able to share that with us today, and we'll be having a pulse on everything as well as the town hall itself. I thank you again for your time. To learn more about the International of Black World 21st Century, make sure you go to IBW21.org and follow them everywhere on Instagram, X, Facebook, at IBW21st. You make sure that you tap into this important organization, and of course this town hall if you're in the DC area on November 14th at 6:30 p.m. Dr. Daniels, thank you. I know that you are a really busy man, but please come back and see us here on WIN TV.
I absolutely will do that, and I thank you so much. And I am so proud of the work, as is its founder, of the tradition being carried on at the Washington Informer. It is incredibly powerful work, and we really appreciate that.
Well, we thank you, and thank you for the important work that you're doing as well. We appreciate it.
All right.
Yes, thank you. You all, I mean, if you're not fired up after talking to Dr. Ron Daniels, I don't know
I'm good.
who can be. I mean, that was just really a great conversation, and certainly we have our work to do as we continue to pick up the pieces post this, like we said, very stressful election season. Thank you again, Dr. Daniels, for being with us. And without further ado, I'm really excited to learn more about the Black-owned label, about consumer trends, about how we can tap into it. And there's not another better person to come and talk to us than Dr. Khalia Jenkins, who'll be talking with our awesome lifestyle reporter, Brenda C. Seiler. Thank you so much, Brenda, for being with us today on this fantastic Friday. I'm going to toss it to you, and thank you, Dr. Khalia Jenkins, so much for being with us today. You all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it was wonderful to hear from Ron Daniels, because I worked at the Institute of the Black World in Atlanta when I graduated from college. So such memories and such a wonderful foundation coming right out of college. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brenda Seiler, lifestyle reporter for the Washington Informer, and I'm excited to bring to you Professor, where she is a person who is out there looking at marketing techniques and doing research, consumer behavior. She's sharing that information with her students at AU, but she's going to share some with us. And I want to talk to you about today. First of all, welcome, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you for being with us. And I want to start off by talking about consumer marketing. And in particular, you're going to talk to us today about products that are specifically marketed as being produced by Black-owned companies. Let's talk about that.
Yes. So this is actually my dissertation research. I finished my PhD in 2023 from the University of South Florida down in Tampa. And I got interested in this topic during the COVID times, when a lot of businesses and a lot of major retailers were starting to mark things as Black owned. And I was just curious what impact that really has.
And so, what kind of research did you find told you about Black-owned businesses marketing themselves as such?
Yeah, so the research angle that we decided to take on this was looking at Black-owned products that are being marketed in large retailers like a Walmart or a Target, something along those lines. And so for the most part, those kinds of retailers didn't specifically mark the products in store that way. They marked them that way online, so that's the angle that we took on this. And, interesting findings. So Black people were more likely to purchase the products when they were labeled as Black owned. But even that came with a caveat. So we found that was only true when the products were not just marked solely with a Black owned label. So it needed to have some other things like non-GMO or vegan or basically some other cues that people could use to inference like the product quality. So what happened was if it only had a Black owned label, Black people were less likely to choose it and also less likely to give it a higher product quality rating. But when we combine that with other labels, it served as a cue, basically like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is a good product. So then people were more likely to choose it and more likely to give it a higher product quality judgment. Unfortunately, for non-African Americans, we never really broke above like a 50-50 kind of split. So not so helpful outside of our population. And the marker that we used for this was colorblind racial attitudes, which is essentially, it's researched by Eduardo Bonilla Silva. But it looks at the more that you believe that our society is beyond race, like race isn't a factor, then you're more likely to believe that, oh, there's no reason for things to be marked this way. So when they are marked this way, you either feel like, A, somebody's trying to guilt you into buying the product, or B, that there's some deficiency in the product and they're trying to, quote, make up for it with this label. So the higher that somebody scored on that scale, the less likely they were to choose the Black on label product. And that was true for both Black people and non-Black people, because Black people also can share those kinds of attitudes.
Well, I used to see an influencer on Instagram who would periodically come out with, here are the latest products that I have found that are produced by Black-owned companies. And she would tell you show the label or the bottle, or go into the stores and take a picture and let you know where you could actually buy those particular products, which to me is kind of like a very easy way to promote your product and maybe not have to pay advertising dollars for it. Yeah. This is a woman that was going out on her own doing the research. In your research that you've done, have you been able to find other different ways than the traditional advertising, taking an ad out, putting up signs in a store or whatever, that Black-owned products are marketed to our population, to Black audiences, or to the population at large?
Yeah, so actually that is the perfect strategy. That's one of the things that I recommend in this particular paper, is the strategy of using bloggers and influencers to highlight Black-owned products versus actually tagging them that way. Because then you avoid having any of the negatives that could come from being tagged that way. Because people who watch those kinds of content generally are the people who are going to go do that anyway. So the algorithm is going to push that to them. It's unlikely to ever go to anyone who wasn't going to shop Black-owned products. So it's actually the perfect strategy is to use, influencers and bloggers to promote Black-owned products versus actually tagging it that way in the store. Some of the other strategies that we suggested were, instead of having the product directly labeled as Black-owned, a lot of companies offer the ability to have a page where they list all of their Black-owned products. And so instead of having your product specifically marked as that in the general product search, you can just have it on the page for the Black-owned products. That way, those who are seeking that know, oh, this is where I can go to find these kind of brands to support that. But you don't face any of the negative backlash that could come from being labeled that way.
Yes.
Yeah. And some of the other things we suggested were if you're going to utilize these kind of labels, to utilize it in spaces where there's already an ethnically owned section, because then it's actually seen as more authentic because it's fitting within the brand, right? So if you're already looking for something that was, if you're in the ethnic aisle already and you see something that's labeled as Black owned, then you're like, oh, okay, this product actually is more authentic when it's labeled that way. And our last thing was capitalizing on opportunities when something happens in the media around Black people that actually is a time where people are more likely to support Black owned. So unfortunately that falls off, but we found, in another research paper that looks at this for Black owned restaurants, they found that so in the 3-4 weeks right after some incident happens, where people are really focused on Black people, you get a boost for Black owned businesses, but it of course falls off because people feel like, oh, I did my good deed, I supported, and they fall off, which we also find in the product space is that people will buy the product initially, but unless they literally, we run a 1 to 7 scale on liking, and unless someone extremely likes the product, they're unlikely to come back again and purchase for non-Black people. Whereas we ran it with other cues, like instead of using Black owned, we did just a new business. We did it was for a brand of cookies, so we did non-GMO or vegan brand of cookies, and no other condition did they have to extremely like it to come back and purchase it again, unless it was the Black owned label product. So, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for talking with us today. I hope that there are some entrepreneurs listening to us that can benefit from the research findings that you have brought with us today, because I think there's room for all the entrepreneurs and the products that they might have for us. But marketing is a big part of it. Advertising is only one tactic. There's so many tactics that can be engaged in order to market your products. And thank you for sharing some of those findings with us. Folks, we've been listening to Professor Khalia Jenkins. She is a professor at American University. She focuses in on consumer behavior and marketing. And we've been talking about putting out there and promoting Black-owned businesses and their products. So thank you for being with us today, and please stay in touch. And if you're doing more research, we'd like to hear more of what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you. Will do.
Thank you. And we continue today with a play that has had its world premiere here in Washington this year, and I had a chance to see it earlier this week. We're going to be talking to Ruben Santiago-Hudson, but we're going to look at this clip first.
From Emmy Award winner John Leguizamo comes the world premiere of the next great American family drama, The Other Americans. Travel to Queens, New York to meet Nelson Castro as he wrestles with a failing chain of laundromats and a family on the brink. The Other Americans, starring John Leguizamo, directed by Ruben Santiago-Hudson, now playing through November 24th. For tickets, visit arenastage.org.
And thank you for that clip. And we are going to hear from the director of The Other Americans, Ruben Santiago-Hudson. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
If you all don't know who this man is, you've been living in a hole. I don't know. You've seen him everywhere. You've seen him everywhere, in front of the camera, in the front of the stage. He's done so much work behind the scenes as a screenwriter and as a playwright. And he is working with another multi-talented human being, John Leguizamo. The production now at DC's Arena Stage, The Other Americans, was written by John Leguizamo, and Ruben is here because he's the director. What a wonderful production. I just want to say that right off the bat. And people need to go to Arena Stage to see this. It's in the genre of what we might call a family drama that has a lot of complications. Why don't you tell us a little more from that?
Well, I don't want to give up too much, but I do want to say that it's just exciting to have a Latin family take center stage instead of always being on the periphery. This Latin community, this Latin family is in the center of the world in this, 2-hour epic drama. And it's just, insular family and all the difficulties that happen in any family, any American family, take place in this household. And to just sit with this Latin family and hear the sounds and smell the smells and see the foods and the recipes, the dances and the conflict, the pathos, the pain, and the joy of just being a family and navigating, relationships and space.
You're absolutely right, because that's what I summed up to myself, is that this could happen across the board in any family household. And where you're trying to, as it says in the notes, you're trying to make the American dream come true for you, but things happen, and then there are layers of things that happen that maybe you're not aware. You and John Leguizamo coming together with this and then bringing this world premiere, the world premiere to Arena Stage. Talk about that whole coming together and the process.
Well, I got a few texts from John, and I was very busy, and I think I was writing, I don't know if I was writing Ma Rainey or something at the time. And so I didn't get back to him in a timely fashion. He kept saying, "Don't leave me hanging. I got something I want you to read." And once I read it, it was exactly where I needed to be. I needed to be with my Latin culture, with that Latin aspect and part of my culture that I think I need to serve a little stronger. And so I was just coming from directing a Latin a play, and then here, fabulous play comes up. This great talent, this wonderful, wonderful artist, John Leguizamo. So we started working on it a few years ago. And then once we felt it was ready to go, we had to figure out where would we like to be. And when you think of places in this country that are theater places that where historically some of the greatest plays have had world premieres or being part of the journeys, being in DC, and we have several theaters here. And I was very excited about the idea of working with Hannah Sharif, the new artistic director at the Arena. And so I gave her a call and said, "I got something if you'd like to see it." And she said, "How fast can you get it to me?" And it was in her email immediately. She read it, called me the next day and said, "Let's do this." So I spoke to John and said, "This is where I like to go." And he was over the moon because of the history here at the Arena and also the proximity to New York and the educated theater audience, and also having the opportunity to bring in a multicultural audience, which is here in DC, one of the most multicultural cities in the country.
I think a lot of people and I'm glad you mentioned it, may not realize how many pre-Broadway runs started at Arena Stage before. In fact, you've got the poster in the background of The Great White Hope with James Earl Jones, who we just recently lost. That started here at Arena Stage and then went on to Broadway. And I want to get into the crux of the play, but you and I did have a conversation after the performance, and there are hopes to take it at least to the Public Theater in New York in due time. But the cast is amazing. You have someone else in there, that Les, who a lot of people may recognize that name, and I know they would know her face because she's been in a lot of different things as well. She was in Oz. She was in
New York Undercover.
Dexter. Yeah, New York Undercover, Dexter. I mean, all of these major dramas, and she plays the wife, Patty, of John Leguizamo's character, Nelson. Then we have the two actors that are portraying their children, and that would be Bradley James Tejada.
No, Bradley is the son-in-law. It would be.
Oh, I'm sorry, he's the son. I'm sorry, they're already married. That's right, and Rebecca Jimenez, and then your son is playing Nicky, the son of the John Leguizamo and Luna character. But let's talk about his situation. And it's based on, the play itself is based on what John told me, a true situation. There was a hate crime. There was a hate crime that took place.
Yes, it was. A family member of his was assaulted, traumatically assaulted, because it set that person into somewhat of a nervous breakdown eventually, and it was just trying to find his footing, and find balance in his life again. And subsequently, he had to be put into a institution, a mental institution, for a short amount of time, or actually 10 months or so. And this play takes place with that person, my son Trey being depicted as that person who comes home and he's trying to find his balance, find his place in that house, find his place in society again, and find out how he can function with the trauma that he carries with him every day into this world that offers his own traumas. So the play is that balance. The nurturing mother, wants to take care of him, but also show him love and a certain amount of independence. The father, who's pretty much domineering, like a strong Latin father, but the machismo is there, the alpha dog, as they say, is there. And then that insular family, the people that make the gumbo good, that make the ingredients of the play good, the best friend, the son-in-law, these things come in, and then which are combustible with his dilemma, Mickey's dilemma, coming in trying to just be normal. And what he wants more than anything is his freedom, freedom to be, freedom to be.
And then there's another issue going on, and that has to do with the family business. Nelson owns a series of a number of laundromats.
Yes.
Some financial challenges, and he has to figure out how to manage and work his way through those items, those activities as well. And so you've got things that are piling on top of each other that build up to a state of, oh my God, what's happening here? And I was observing you when I came to the performance. I saw you sitting in the audience, and I saw you really looking at the stage and contemplating, and I was just wondering, what is he thinking? And I appreciate this picture right here, because I want to give credit also to the set designer. But I kept looking at you and looking at how you were looking at your actors. And I kept wondering what he's thinking. I could see you smiling sometimes, but you were just very pensive in terms of looking at your actors. And I'm thinking that's the way you're supposed to be. But look at this set. We're showing a picture now of the set. Your set designer was amazing. I really felt like I was looking at a real house in Queens. And you did some things with the set that I'm not going to talk about because
Thank you.
Because people have to go see it. There's some things there, but even I could figure out, you can see the bedroom, you can see the living room, the dining room, the entryway. You can figure out there's some steps that maybe, just a in-town home that's probably more narrow than you think it would be, but it's kind of narrow. But then when you get inside, when you feel the warmth of the home, it seems to be bigger. But the set design was, to me, realistic, so realistic. Yes. And beautifully done. So please, kudos to the set designer.
Well, it's a realistic play, and so with some hyper real moments. And so what the objective was here with Arnolfo Maldonado, who did the set design. Well, the objective was to make a house, put a house in the Fishlander Theater, and let's live in it. Let's make it lived in. So throughout the process, little elements made it more and more lived in. I have to say, I'm extremely proud. That was like half of the set. That was for the audiences listening. That was half of it. But I'm just extremely proud of the entire team that I put together, the actors as well as the designers and all the people backstage who have been instrumental in making this thing pop. The staff that they have here at the arena, who I really put to their task, and they grabbed onto it with both arms, and just because I'm very meticulous and very timely about how I do things. I don't ponder things. I move things along in a very smooth drop off way. Things drop into other things, so I never let the audience really sit back too much. And that was me when you were watching me. I have to admit to you, and very honestly, when I go to the theater, I simply go to the theater. I learned from my mentor, Lloyd Richards, when you do the work in the room, you have to just sit back and allow it to reveal itself in performance. And that's what I do. Of course, I have different things and notes that I would take when my director hat pops on. But for the most part, I am enjoying the play, and I'm taking the journey with you all, the audience. The pain in it, the real laughter in it, which is a lot of laughter, and the love in it. I'm taking it in, and I cry real tears, and I laugh real laughs.
Well, the play is wonderful. Again, this is at Arena Stage until November the 24th. The Other Americans. Ruben Santiago-Hudson is the director. The playwright is John Leguizamo. He's also one of the leads in the play. It's fantastic. And I want to give, again, kudos to Hannah Sharif. This is her inaugural season at Arena Stage. Yes, she's been here in the DC area for a little more than a year, but this ensemble of plays is 10 plays she's putting on this year, and I believe 7 of the 10 are new. And one of those new plays is The Other Americans. Yes, and we want you to go see it. November 24th is when it leaves, is the last performance. So please see it now. You will not be sorry. And thank you so much, Ruben, for being with us today.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I enjoyed the first segment. I'm saying I gotta tune into this now. You're doing great work, and I appreciate it. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, we are a Black female-owned newspaper that this show is produced out of. We have just launched our 60th anniversary year. So you have said the most wonderful things to us. So thank you so very much. We're going to get you to say something else about that once you get off camera. So thank you.
All righty. No problem. Thanks.
Have a good one. Congratulations on the production.
All right. Appreciate it.
Okay, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. What a great show. We learned about a wonderful conference that's going to be coming up, put on by the Institute of the Black World. We learned about consumer research that's looking at how Black entrepreneurs are promoting and getting their products sold. And then finally, we talked about a world premiere play at Arena Stage, The Other Americans. The play was written by John Leguizamo. He is one of the leads. He is also joined by Luna Lauren Velez, who you've seen in many television shows like Oz, New York Undercover, and Dexter. The cast is fantastic, and that's going to be at Arena Stage until November the 24th. And as we're closing out, just want to remind you, the latest version of the Washington Informer that comes out every Thursday is out. If you have not picked it up at your newsstand, you can get to it online, WashingtonInformer.com. Join us next Friday at 12 noon, because you know we're going to have more exciting things to share with you about the DC area community. I want to thank our publisher, Denise Rollard Barnes, for allowing me to sit in today. I want to thank Misha Green, our managing editor, for her input in terms of our first interview. So you all have a good and safe weekend. Thank you for joining us.